Imagine standing on an ancient battlefield, beneath an endless star-filled sky. Warriors clad in bronze armor grip swords forged not from earthly mines, but from meteorites, rocks fallen from space. Blazing through the atmosphere in streaks of cosmic fire, these blades gleam darker and denser than any known metal, capable of slicing through armor with supernatural ease. Legends whisper of these celestial swords altering entire battles, granting their bearers near divine prestige and terrifying enemies into submission. Could these extraordinary tales be true? Did ancient civilizations truly wield weapons made from fallen stars, forever shaping the course of human history? Throughout human history, the night sky has captivated our imagination. Long before telescopes or satellites, our ancestors watched in awe as streaks of fire tore across the heavens. These were not just celestial events, they were messages from the gods, omens of fate, or the fall of something divine. To ancient eyes, a meteor was a miracle, a cosmic visitor sent by unseen forces. But what if these skyborne marvels weren't just revered from afar? What if, in the hands of ancient smiths, they were transformed into something far more tangible and far more deadly? This idea isn't fantasy. Archaeological discoveries from across the globe, Egypt, Mesopotamia, China, and even the Americas, have unearthed tools and weapons crafted from meteoric iron, some dating back thousands of years. These materials arrived from beyond our planet, untouched by Earth's crust, forged in the cold vacuum of space, and tempered by the violent heat of atmospheric entry. Their metallic composition, rich in nickel and cobalt, made them stronger and rarer than anything early humans could produce. And yet somehow, these ancient civilizations learned to shape them. They turned falling stars into blades of war and power. But questions abound. How did these early societies discover the properties of meteoric iron? What drove them to collect, preserve, and ultimately weaponize it? Were these weapons symbols of status, religious artifacts, or instruments of true combat? The deeper we look into this mystery, the more it challenges our assumptions about ancient technology and belief systems. Today we embark on a journey through history, archaeology, and myth to uncover the lost legacy of space-forged weapon tools that connected the heavens to the battlefield, and perhaps gave their wielders an edge, both physical and divine. A significant challenge clouds our understanding of meteoric weapons: the almost complete absence of explicit historical records detailing their use. Despite physical evidence unearthed in tombs and ancient sites, written accounts that describe these celestial weapons, their construction, or their role in warfare, are curiously scarce. It's as though the knowledge of how to wield the stars was never meant to be widely shared. Buried in ash, myth or silence, myth or silence. Why this silence? One theory suggests these weapons were considered sacred, possibly divine. In many ancient cultures, anything that came from the heavens, lightning, comets, or meteorites, was regarded as a message or gift from the gods. To forge such an object into a blade was not merely a technical feat, it was an act of spiritual significance. The weapon may have been reserved for priests, kings, or warriors deemed chosen by the divine. Documenting their creation in ordinary texts may have been considered heretical or forbidden. Others propose a more practical explanation: oral tradition. In societies where storytelling, not writing, preserved history, the knowledge of meteoric iron may have passed from master to apprentice through spoken word and demonstration alone. If that chain was broken through war, conquest, or natural disaster, entire techniques could have vanished without a trace. What remains are fragments: an unusually durable dagger in a burial chamber, a high nickel axe head, or a ceremonial spear tip with no known smelting origin. Then there's the issue of the material itself. Meteoric iron is unlike typical terrestrial iron ores. It contains high levels of nickel, making it much more difficult to forge using early metallurgy. Ancient blacksmiths would have had no modern tools, no blast furnaces, and little understanding of alloy behavior. Yet somehow, they succeeded. How? That's a question modern science is still trying to answer. Did they accidentally discover techniques through trial and error? Were they guided by lost knowledge, perhaps passed down from a prehistoric culture more advanced than we know? Even more puzzling is how widespread these finds are. From Egypt to Anatolia, from China to the Arctic. Cultures across the ancient world encountered meteorites and crafted tools from them. But the trail goes cold when it comes to battle accounts or written records detailing their use in actual combat. This gap only deepens the mystery. If these weapons existed, and the evidence says they did, why were they hidden from the pages of history? Were they simply too rare, too sacred, or too powerful to be openly discussed? Perhaps the truth lies in the fusion of all these possibilities. Meteoric weapons weren't prestigious tools of worth, they were relics of the cosmos, imbued with such reverence and complexity that their stories could only live on in whispered legend and buried metal. In 1922, deep beneath the sands of the Valley of the Kings, British archaeologist Howard Carter made one of the most astonishing discoveries in history, the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. Among the thousands of priceless artifacts uncovered, one item stood out, not for its gold or grandeur, but for its origin, a finely crafted dagger. Sheathed beside the boy king's body, its blade still gleaming after more than 3,000 years. At first glance, it appeared to be a ceremonial weapon, perhaps intended for the afterlife. But in 2016, nearly a century after its discovery, modern scientists re-examined the blade using advanced X-ray fluorescence spectrometry. The results shocked the world. The dagger wasn't made of any metal native to Earth. It was composed of meteoric iron, rich in nickel and cobalt, matching the exact chemical signatures of iron meteorites. This wasn't a decorative trinket, it was a blade born from the stars. What makes this discovery even more extraordinary is its age. The dagger dates back to around 1350 BC, in nearly 700 years before the Iron Age reached Egypt. At that time, most tools and weapons were made of bronze. Iron, let alone meteoric iron, was almost entirely unknown, making this blade not just rare but revolutionary. The blade's presence in Tutankhamun's tomb speaks volumes. For a young pharaoh of relatively minor political importance, to be buried with such a cosmic artifact suggests it held enormous symbolic power. It may have been considered a divine weapon, proof of the pharaoh's godlike authority, a tool to protect him, not only in life, but in the afterlife as well. Speculation also surrounds how the dagger came into Egyptian hands. Some scholars suggest it was a diplomatic gift from a neighboring kingdom, such as the Hittites, who may have possessed knowledge of meteoric iron. Others argue it was locally crafted by elite artisans with rare knowledge of celestial metals. Either way, it implies an ancient network of knowledge sharing and reverence for these fallen materials. The craftsmanship is equally mysterious. The blade is finely polished with no signs of corrosion, suggesting an advanced understanding of metalwork far beyond what was typical at the time. It begs the question, who forged it? Is there a special class of ancient smiths trained to work with meteorites? Celestial blacksmiths whose skills have long since vanished? This single blade, no longer than a ruler, has forced archaeologists to reevaluate the timeline of metallurgy. If one dagger like this existed, how many others were lost to time, melted down, repurposed, or buried without fanfare? The Tutankhamun dagger is not just an artifact, it's a clue, a shimmering remnant of a forgotten age. When humans dared to shape the stars into steel, long before the Egyptian pharaohs left their mark in gold, another great civilization thrived between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Mesopotamia, the cradle of human civilization. Here, the Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians pioneered writing, astronomy, and monumental architecture. But among their many achievements lies a lesser-known enigma: their use and reverence of meteoric iron, cuneiform tablets, the clay records of these ancient peoples, make references to a mysterious material they called anbar, often translated as sky iron, or metal from heaven. This term appears in administrative documents, inventories, and even offerings to gods, suggesting meteoric iron was not only known but valued highly, far above common metals. Unlike bronze or copper, which were widely available, anbar was exceedingly rare. It was never used in large quantities, never mass-produced. It was reserved for the elite, kings, high priests, and perhaps the divine statues themselves. Some historians believe fragments of meteorites were embedded into ceremonial weapons, crowns, or statues of gods to invoke cosmic power or divine favor. In the ancient city of Ur, archaeologists uncovered several objects, needles, beads, and a small axe head that tested positive for high nickel content, indicating meteoric origin. These items date back to 2500 BCE, predating even Tutankhamun's dagger. Yet, as with Egypt, no manuals or metallurgical texts exist explaining how this sky iron was worked. Its crafting process remains hidden, likely transmitted orally among a very small circle of artisans and religious leaders. Mesopotamian mythology may offer further insight. The storm god, Adad, the warrior Marduk, and the fearsome goddess Inanna were often associated with celestial phenomena: stars, lightning, fire from the heavens. Some texts describe divine weapons falling from the sky or forged in the heavens, hinting that meteoric iron may have been imbued with sacred meaning. The convergence of myth, metal, and mystery in Mesopotamia paints a compelling picture. This wasn't just a civilization of irrigation canals and ziggurats. It was one that looked to the stars not only for guidance, but for materials to arm their gods and kings. Their reverence for meteorites, preserved in clay tablets and buried artifacts, reveals an ancient relationship between earth and sky one, forged in iron. In ancient China, long before the rise of the Great Qin Empire, the Shang Dynasty ruled with a deep connection to the heavens. Known for their oracle bones, bronze casting, and complex ritual systems, the Shang kings believed their power was granted by celestial forces. Every thunderclap, eclipse, or falling star carried divine meaning. And among these heavenly signs, meteors were considered especially potent. The Chinese word for meteorite, tiantai, dates back millennia. Ancient texts and records preserved in later dynasties mention instances of iron falling from the sky, which was viewed as a rare and powerful omen, though direct written records from the Shang period are limited. Archaeological discoveries provide compelling clues. In 1936, Chinese archaeologists excavated a burial site in Henan province, believed to be associated with a noble family from the late Shang era. Among the many ritual bronzes and jade ornaments was a small knife with an unusually high nickel content. Modern analysis suggested it was forged from meteoric iron, marking one of the earliest known uses of such material in East Asia. Unlike other cultures that may have emphasized the martial use of meteoric iron, the Shang appear to have treated it as a ritual material. Such blades or tools would have been used in sacrificial ceremonies to communicate with ancestral spirits or the heavens themselves. Given the Shang dynasty's belief in the mandate of Havana, divine right to rule, possessing a tool forged from the heavens may have served as both a political and spiritual symbol. It wasn't just rare metal. It was proof of divine favor, forged by cosmic forces beyond human comprehension. In the hands of Shang kings and priests, meteorites weren't just gifts from the gods. They were bridges to the divine. Across the vast expanse of pre-Columbian North America, Native American tribes revered the natural world with profound spiritual insight. The sky, land, and everything in between were woven into myth and ritual. Among the most sacred of phenomena were meteors, fiery stones that fell from the heavens. To many indigenous cultures, these were not random cosmic events, but deliberate messages from the spirit world. And sometimes they became tools in the hands of warriors and shamans. Nowhere is this more evident than with the Inuit and other Arctic cultures near the famed Cape York meteorite in Greenland. For centuries, local Inuit peoples used fragments of this massive iron meteor, some weighing over 30 tons, as sources of raw material. Without smelting technology, they ingeniously cold-forged the metal into blades, harpoon tips, and tools, using stone hammers and bone anvils. These artifacts were vital for survival and held deep ceremonial value. In the Great Plains, tribes such as the Pawnee and Sioux told stories of thunderstones, heavenly objects fallen to earth, sometimes used by legendary heroes or medicine men. Though less direct evidence of meteoritic weapons survives in these regions, many iron artifacts of non-terrestrial origin have been discovered buried in ritual mounds and sacred caches. For the Hopewell culture in the Ohio Valley, meteoric iron held ceremonial importance. Artifacts such as beads and small blades crafted from meteorites, dating back over 2,000 years, have been uncovered in burial mounds, often placed alongside offerings of copper, shells, and obsidian. These weren't tools for war, They were offerings to the cosmos carried into the afterlife. To Native American societies, meteoric iron was more than rare metal. It was a link between sky and earth, imbued with energy and meaning. To wield it was to hold the breath of the stars. The sky was heavy with smoke. The sun hung low, a hazy red orb above the Anatolian hills, casting long shadows over the battlefield. Two armies faced each other, their bronze shields glinting in the fading light, drums pounding like the heartbeat of the earth. On one side stood the Hittites, hardened by years of warfare, known for their chariots and iron-working skills. On the other, an alliance of rebellious city-states, determined to break free from imperial control. But among the ranks of the Hittites, a figure emerged who would turn the tide not with sheer numbers, but with something far more ancient and far more terrifying. He was called Esharani, a warrior priest said to be chosen by the gods, clad in blackened armor. He bore a sword unlike any seen before, weapon whispered about in the corners of temples and around sacred fires. It was not made of bronze, nor of any earthly ore. It was dark, almost obsidian, but shimmered with an unnatural sheen. They said it came from the sky, forged from a stone that fell in fire during the reign of his grandfather. The blade had no name, but it had legend. Its enemies called it the Falling Fang. The story went that 3 generations earlier, a fiery object had streaked across the sky, landing in the mountains east of Hattusa. The priests declared it sacred. Most were afraid to touch it, believing it cursed or divine. But one blacksmith, driven by visions, spent years hammering a piece of it into a single, flawless sword. It resisted the fire, cracked lesser metals, and never dulled. Only one man had ever wielded it till now. It was in Esharani's hands. As the signal was given, the battlefield erupted into chaos. Chariots thundered forward, arrows rained down, and the clash of shields echoed across the hills. Esharani moved like a shadow through the fray, his blade sliced through bronze like silk, cutting not just armor, but morale. Men dropped their weapons and fled at the sight of it. It did not shin, it absorbed light, drank it in, and seemed to pulse with each life it took. One rebel chieftain, a seasoned warrior, charged him with a heavy axe. The moment their weapons met, the axe head cracked in two, shattered by a blow that seemed effortless. Esharani did not speak. He didn't need to. The sword did all the speaking. Word of the blade spread faster than the blood spilled. Some claimed it hissed when it struck flesh. Others said it gave off a strange hum when raised under moonlight. Many believed it was cursed that anyone who used it would carry the weight of every soul it claimed. But Esharani didn't care. He believed the gods had sent the blade to him and him alone. By nightfall, the field was silent. The rebellion was crushed, and the surviving leaders knelt before the Hittite king. But they did not credit their defeat to tactics or numbers. It blamed the sword. In the years that followed, Esharani became both feared and revered. Songs were sung of the blade that fell from the heavens. Temples began to depict it in carvings, always without a name, but always glowing in celestial light. Some even claimed it disappeared after Esharani's death, buried with him or spirited away by the gods who gave it. No archaeologist has ever confirmed the story. No definitive blade has ever been recovered from Hittite tombs matching the description. But in dusty ruins, beneath broken tablets and carved into temple walls, hints remain. A dark sword, streaked with stars. A warrior who struck fear into the hearts of men. And metal that did not come from earth. Whether the story is literal history or a myth born of truth, it tells us something profound. To the ancients, weapons were more than tools, they were symbols. And a blade made from the heavens wasn't just sharper or stronger. It was alive with meaning, it was divine. And so, the story of Esharani and the Falling Fang lives on part memory, part mystery, and wholly unforgettable. Across continents and cultures, across thousands of years, a silent thread connects civilizations that never met, never traded, never shared a common language, but looked to the same sky. And from that sky, they received gifts. Meteorites, fragments of the cosmos, carrying with them the mystery of creation and the allure of the unknown. That these civilizations not only revered these objects but forged them into tools and weapons tells us something deeply profound. It reveals a human instinct not only to observe the stars, but to bring them down to earth, to shape them, to wield them. This isn't just metallurgy, it's mythology made manifest. We saw it in Egypt, where a boy king was buried with a blade born from the stars, so finely crafted that it puzzled scientists for nearly a century. We saw it in Mesopotamia, where scribes described sky iron with reverence, and craftsmen folded it into offerings for kings and gods. In China, meteoric metal became ritual proof that the Shang kings were favored by the heavens. In the Americas, it was shaped into arrowheads and sacred beads, tools for survival and symbols of divine connection. And in the firelit legends of Anatolia, we imagined a warrior wielding a blade so fearsome it silenced armies and altered the fate of nations. And yet, for all this awe and artistry, the record remains incomplete. The silence of ancient texts speaks volumes. Why didn't they write more? Why did they leave behind only fragments, beads, daggers, whispers, and stone? Perhaps because these weapons weren't meant to be catalogued. They weren't tools of common men. They were reserved for gods, kings, and the chosen few. Their creation may have been a secret rite, an act of divine transformation, from fallen star to sacred steel. Even now, as we probe deeper into history with modern science, the mystery endures. We can analyze the composition, trace the nickel content, scan the artifacts atom by atom, but we may never fully understand how these people learned to shape the unshapable, to mold something that began its journey billions of years ago in the void of space. What we do know is this: humanity's fascination with the heavens didn't start with telescopes. It began with wonder, with fireballs streaking across the night sky and the ancient desire to hold a piece of the divine. And for a rare few, that desire became reality. They didn't just look to the stars, they carried them into battle. The story of meteoric weapons is far from over. As archaeology advances and new discoveries come to light, we may find more blades, more clues, more stories that connect us not only to our ancestors, but to the cosmos itself.